That was herself, pointed, dart-like, definite. That was herself when some effort, some call on her to be herself, drew the parts together. It was a fragment from Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, where Clarissa looked in the mirror and thought. But after that, she wondered which self, the one performing at parties, the one lost in memories, or something deeper and more elusive. This question haunts us all. We walk through our days thinking we know who we are, but there is this nagging feeling that we are somehow performing a role we never consciously choose. We are living someone else's idea of what our life should look like. And here comes Martin Heidegger, so one of the 20th century's most challenging philosophers. He spent his entire career wrestling with this very problem. His insight was both simple and devastating. Most of us aren't really living our own lives at all. We are living as what he called das Man, literally, the day. We've become lost in the crowd of expectations, norms, and anonymous voices that tell us who to be. And today I want to talk to you about what it means to be authentic in a world that constantly pulls us toward conformity, about the anxiety that signals something deeper calling to us, and about why understanding our mortality might be the key to finally living as ourselves. Martin Heidegger was born in 1889 in a small German town, the son of a church sexton, and he originally planned to become a priest, but philosophy captured him completely. By the time he was in his 30s, he was asking questions that would reshape how we think about existence itself. Heidegger's central insight was that Western philosophy had been asking the wrong questions for over 2000 years. While other philosophers debated what things are, Heidegger asks something more fundamental. What does it mean for anything to be at all? What is being itself? And this wasn't just academic curiosity. Heidegger believed that by forgetting this question, by taking existence for granted, we had lost touch with what makes us most human. We had become strangers to ourselves. Being and Time, published in 1927, was supposed to be just the first part of a larger project. But what he completed was revolutionary enough. He showed us that human existence, and so what he called Dasein, literally being there, is fundamentally different from the existence of objects. We don't just exist like rocks or umbrellas. We exist in a way that constantly questions and interprets our own existence, so we are reflective beings. But here's where it gets personal, where Heidegger's abstract philosophy meets the way you actually live your life. Because according to Heidegger, most of us spend most of our time fleeting from this questioning nature of our being. We lose ourselves in what he called everydayness, the comfortable routines and social expectations that let us avoid confronting who we really are. Think about your typical day. I presume you wake up and check your phone immediately, asking what are they talking about. You get dressed in clothes that fit what they expect in your workplace. You have conversations using phrases you have heard others use, expressing opinions that feel safe and acceptable. You make choices based on what they do and what they value. But who are they? That's the terrifying thing. They are no one in particular and everyone at once. They are the anonymous voice of social conformity, the invisible pressure that shapes how we think, feel, and behave, without us even noticing. Heidegger called this way of being das Man, the they self. When we live as das Man, we are not really making our own choices. We are doing what one does. We say what one says. We believe what one believes. This isn't necessarily about being a follower or lacking personality at all. You can be successful, creative, even feel rebellious in your life, and still be living as das Man. The question isn't whether you are different from others, but whether you are living from your own authentic center or from an internalized sense of what's expected. I think about how we use language. We say, they say you should exercise more, or they say this movie is good. But who exactly said this? And of course, it will depend to some degree on the language you use. But generally, we can differ something like generic opinions. Often we can't point to anyone specific. It's just what one knows. This anonymous authority shapes everything from our career choices to our relationships to our deepest values. The French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, who knew Heidegger's work intimately, once described this as living in a state of constant chatter. Not just external noise, but internal chatter. Our minds filled with voices that aren't quite our own, thoughts we never quite choose to think. And here's what makes das Man so seductive. It's incredibly comfortable. When you live as they, you never have to take full responsibility for your choices. If something goes wrong, well, you are just doing what anyone would do in that situation. You are following the script of life. Living as they also protects us from anxiety. And Heidegger had a very specific understanding of anxiety. Not the worry about particular things, but a deeper existential unease about the groundlessness of existence itself. When we are busy conforming, busy following the crowd, we don't have to confront the fact that ultimately we're alone with our choices in a universe that doesn't come with a instruction manual. But there is a cost to this comfort, of course. We lose touch with what Heidegger called our ownmost possibilities. Yes, his language is pretty hard. The unique potential that belongs to us and us alone. We start to feel like we are living someone else's life, following a path we never really choose. And I believe you know this feeling. It's that moment when you are doing exactly what you are supposed to be doing. Successful by every external measure, and yet you feel empty, disconnected, like you're watching your life happen to someone else. It's the realization that you can't remember the last time you made a choice that came from deep within you rather than from what seemed expected or just appropriate. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher who deeply influenced Heidegger, called this state the sickness unto death. Not physical death, but the death of the self. When we live entirely as they, our authentic self never fully comes to life. But here is where Heidegger offers some hope. We are not permanently trapped in das Man. Something within us resists this anonymous existence. Something calls us back to ourselves. Heidegger actually called this anxiety. But again, not anxiety about specific things. This is a more fundamental unease, a feeling that something isn't quite right with how we are living. It's the anxiety that comes when the comfortable structures of everyday life suddenly seem arbitrary, when the things we thought mattered feel hollow. And this anxiety isn't a problem to be solved. It's a gift, actually. It's our authentic self calling us home, calling us to the shore. Think about those moments when you felt this deeper anxiety. Maybe it was during a major life transition, like graduating, getting married perhaps, changing careers or so on. Maybe it was during a crisis, losing someone you love, facing illness, experiencing failure. Suddenly all the things you thought were important, the status, the routines, the expectations, seem insignificant. You feel untethered, groundless. Most of us try to escape this feeling as quickly as possible. We rush back to the familiar comforts of das Man. We distract ourselves with busyness, with consumption, with the endless scroll of other people's lives on social media. But Heidegger suggests we should stay with this anxiety, at least for some time. Listen to what it's telling us. Because in those moments of groundlessness, we come closest to encountering our authentic selves. When the external structures fall away, What remains is the irreducible fact of your existence, your freedom, your responsibility to choose who you want to be. This brings us to perhaps Heidegger's most challenging and transformative insight: our relationship with death. Not death as a distant future event, but what he called being toward death. The constant awareness that our time is limited, that our existence is inevitably finite. Most of us, most of the time, live as we were immortal. We make plans as if we had unlimited time. We postpone the things that matter most. We tell ourselves we'll get to our authentic life later on, after we finish this degree, this project, or this phase of our life. But Heidegger argues that truly confronting our mortality, not in a morbid way but with clear eyes, is essential to authentic living. When you really understand that your time is limited, that this life is all you get, it becomes impossible to keep living someone else's version of your life. Death, for Heidegger, is the most personal thing there is. No one can die your death for you. No one can take away the responsibility of living your life. In facing mortality, we come face to face with what is most our own. This isn't about becoming obsessed with death, of course, but about letting the reality of finitude inform how we live. When you know your time is limited, you start to ask different questions. Not what do they expect of me, but what do I actually care about? Not what's the safe choice, but what choice honors the fact that I'm here now with this one life to live. And I think about how differently we behave when we know something is temporary. The last day of holidays feels more vivid. The final conversation with someone moving away carries more weight. When we truly understand that everything is temporary, our careers, our relationships, our very existence, we might start treating each moment with the attention it deserves. So what does authentic living look like? Heidegger doesn't give us a blueprint. That would defeat the whole point, actually. Authenticity can't be prescribed because it's precisely about discovering what's uniquely yours. But he does point towards certain characteristics of authentic existence. Authentic people take responsibility for their choices, even when those choices are difficult or unpopular. They listen to their own inner voice rather than the anonymous chatter of they. They accept the anxiety of groundlessness rather than fleeing into false certainties. And perhaps most importantly, authentic people own their mortality. They live with the awareness that time is precious, that this life is theirs to live, not to waste in conformity to expectations they never choose. Sure, this doesn't mean being selfish or ignoring social responsibility. You can care deeply about others and still live authentically. The difference is that your care comes from your own deep values rather than from external pressure to be seen as a caring person. It also doesn't mean you have to become a hermit or reject all social conventions. You can participate in society, hold down a job, maintain relationships, and still live authentically. The question is whether you're choosing these things from your own center or simply going along with what's expected. Friedrich Nietzsche, whose work influenced Heidegger, wrote about becoming who you are. This isn't about discovering some pre-given self, but about taking responsibility for creating yourself through your own choices. You're not who you think you are who you choose to become. Moment by moment, choice by choice. Heidegger reminds us that authenticity isn't a destination but a constant practice. We don't achieve authentic selfhood once and for all. We fall back into das Man regularly. It's the default mode of human existence, actually. The goal isn't to never lose ourselves in they again, but to develop the capacity to recognize when it's happening and to find our way back to ourselves. This, of course, requires what Heidegger called resoluteness, not stubborn determination, but a kind of open, committed engagement with your own existence. It means staying awake to the choices you are making, the values you are living by, the direction you are heading. It means asking yourself regularly, is this choice coming from me or from what they expect? Am I living my life or performing a role? What would I do if I truly owned the fact that this is my one and only existence? These aren't comfortable questions. They require us to sit with uncertainty, to accept that there is no external authority that can tell us definitely how to live. They ask us to take full responsibility for our lives in a way that can feel overwhelming. But there is also tremendous freedom in this responsibility. When you stop waiting for others to validate your choices, when you stop looking for the right answer outside yourself, you discover that you already have everything you need to live meaningfully. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but authentically. The German word Heidegger uses for this authentic existence is eigentlich, which comes from eigen, meaning own. To live authentically is to live as your own, to own your existence fully. It's to stop being a stranger to yourself and to become home to who you actually are beneath all the roles and expectations. I don't want to end by telling you what to do with your life. That would be another form of Das Man, of course. Another external voice telling you how to be. Instead, I want to leave you with an invitation. An invitation to pay attention. Pay attention to the moments when you feel most alive, most yourself. What are you doing? What are you choosing? How does it feel different from the times when you are just going through the motions? Pay attention to the anxiety that sometimes visits you. Not the worry about specific problems, but that deeper unease about the direction of your life. Instead of immediately distracting yourself, try sitting with it for a moment. What is it trying to tell you? Ask yourself. Pay attention to your mortality, and not in a morbid way, but as a reminder that your time here is precious and limited. If you knew you had 1 year to live, what would you do differently? What would you stop doing? What would you start? Heidegger spent his life trying to wake us up from what he saw as a kind of sleepwalking through existence. His gift to us is the reminder that we have a choice. We can keep living as they, comfortable but inauthentic. Or we can take the risk of living as ourselves, uncertain, groundless, but genuinely alive. The choice, of course, is always yours. It always has been. The question is, are you ready to own it? Speaking of taking responsibility to our choices and the anxiety that comes with authentic living, there's another author who explores what happens when that anxiety turns to guilt, when we feel judged and condemned for reasons we can't even understand. Franz Kafka wrote about a man who wakes up to find himself on trial for a crime that's never explained, facing judges he never sees, in a system that seems designed to crush the human spirit. If you have ever felt guilty without knowing why, or judged by invisible authorities, or you just don't like bureaucracy, you'll want to check out my video on Kafka's The Trial. And for now, until next time. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to give me a like and a subscription if you perhaps want to see more videos like this in the future. Thank you once again and have a good day. Bye.